up with a common denominator. Well, we call it the least common multiple. And the word least is a little deceiving because when you come up with common denominators, you actually want a high number. So for instance, when I look at number 1 and I'm thinking about a great denominator for a 6 and a 4, the first thing that comes to mind is 24. Like maybe I should have a denominator of 24. But actually 12 will work as well. So 12 is the least common multiple. So people hear the word least and they think of a factor like 2. Because least isn't less than either of these, 12. So you want really, it's a high number that both of them will divide into. So your common denominator is the least common multiple. We'll pick 12 because 6 and 4 both go into 12. And then for the variables, you have to pick, every variable has to be there. And the highest exponent presented has to be there. So I'm going to pick x to the second power, y to the third power. So I'm going to write that common denominator twice. Like so. And then I'm going to multiply in whatever I have to make this match the common denominator. You multiply to make this match what you picked for a common denominator. So how do I make 6 turn into 12? I'd have to multiply it by 2, which I'm allowed to do as long as I also multiply the top by 2. So that's how I turn that into 12. I multiply the top and bottom by 2. X squared is here, and it's the same here. So I don't have to multiply x, because it's already x squared. But this is y to the first. And my common denominator has y to the third. So I need to multiply in y squared to make it match. So that's going to make that 2y squared up top. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing here. How do I make 4 turn into 12? Well, I would have to multiply it by 3. So I do that to the top as well. I want to turn x to the first into x squared, so I'm going to also multiply an x in. Y is to the third here, and it's already to the third here, so I don't need to multiply y into the second one. Alright, so now that we have a common denominator, we can actually just write that as one fraction. 2y squared plus 9x all over 12x squared y to the third. That's your answer. So you're adding fractions with multiple term variables. So number 2 looks quite a bit different than number 1. And that's because this is a monomial and this denominator is a polynomial. The terms separated by the plus and minus signs is why we call this a polynomial. It's many terms versus a monomial, one term. So polynomial denominators have to be factored to pick common denominators. So if you can factor the denominators, you have to factor them to pick your LCM. So I'm thinking multiplies to 6 and adds to -5. I think Cassie has it. -3 times -2. So this is equivalent to this. This is just the factored form. Yes. Minus sign 5. And then I factor this one. It's a difference of two perfect squares. So I can just square root 9. I'll do a plus and a minus 3, just square rooting. Those aren't common denominators, those are just factored form. So then my LCM, my common denominator, has to include every factor present in the original denominator. So I'll have to include p minus 3. I put a little check mark if I have it in the list. P minus 2, little check mark. P plus 3, little check mark. P minus 3, already there. I'm not going to write it again. It's in there. Okay. This will be my common denominator. Pretty large common denominator. So I'm going to write them out twice. So same thing, I just want to multiply in what's missing. So I look here, and I compare it. This says 3, sets of parentheses, and it says 2. So which one is missing? Looks like the p plus 3 isn't in this original fraction, so I have to multiply it in. Of course, if I do it to the bottom, I do it to the top. So that's a full FOIL up there. You do double distribution. FOIL those numerators. 2p times p. 2p squared. 2p times 3. 6p. Negative 3 times p. And negative 3 times 3. 9. One of the things that really confuses students is that we are leaving this in factored form and we're putting this in standard form. That's the process. This you can keep separated, but this you need to multiply out so that you can combine terms along the top. Okay, this is the original denominator and it doesn't have p minus 2 in it. So I'm going to multiply it in. And that gets distributed. So we've rewritten the original fractions so that they have a common denominator. What was missing in this one is now a part of it, and what was missing in the second one is now a part of it. So once you get common denominators, you can combine the top. So I'm going to write it as one big fraction. Let's go ahead and combine these like terms. Where we see mistakes is in distributing this minus sign. With subtraction, you have to make sure that you distribute that to this whole like numerator here. So we'll actually make that a plus 10. I'm going to rewrite it 2 more times and I'm going to be done. 2 more rewrites. We have one fraction and everything's been distributed. So our last step is to combine like terms. If I could factor the difference or the result, I would. And I checked that it doesn't factor. That's the answer. checking rational expressions. About 7 steps there. So the good news is almost all of your assignment problems are way shorter than this one. I wanted to do a long subtraction problem just to walk you through it before we start our assignment. So we're going to check homework from yesterday and then just do an assignment, no notes or anything. Open your workbooks to page 109. Third person today.
I have something.
I'm telling you, a lot of people are saying
It's the lunch here. It feels like scraps. Terrible.
Have you seen some of the chicken here?
I rip it open to make sure. I don't bite into that. You can't trust it. You have to rip it into pieces.
Someone ripped open the chicken.
Yeah.
It looked like
Who's got a question on 1 through 6? 1 through 6. I think I asked for questions yesterday. Did you have any? Hello? Heard you absent and then I saw you. Do you have the day before homework? Where do you normally sit? So who did I mark absent? Who sits there? Nice. This is how things get messed up. I don't know. My last one was we did a lockdown and finished the assignment and had time to play through.
How you doing? How you doing? Controls the biggest. What's the point here? Controls. And then you see, and here's the biggest thing. You gotta go to the. You gotta grab whatever is the biggest. I don't know how to do it.
Where'd you get the D then?
There's a deep right here.
Okay, it's not the biggest though.
What?
Not the biggest.
The bigger bees, so you gotta put
Yeah,
the
the
bees.
shelf on the middle, so it's like
So
little like
72. Where'd you get 72?
quarters.
This? So where did I get the answers from?
Oh, look, man.
He's still writing it good.
Alright, 7 through 21 eyes.
So, where's your work?
Get it done. Put your phone in front of it. Don't just have your bag.
You're doing all that?
Easy work.
You know that beat that it had from the course? I seen that.
I've been had to see it. Unless you're smart.
Yeah, I think struggling in it. Struggling.
Riley, what's our common denominator? Yeah. I'm asking you, what are we gonna make for common denominator? X and Y right next to each other. Just like that. So, my first fraction doesn't have y in it, so I will make it have y in it. It will perform the way I believe it should, with a y. My second fraction doesn't have x in it, so I'll make it have x in it. And then I will write them together. Separate. How'd that go, Alex? You ready? You ready for mine? I'll wait. You are? Ready for 9? Yeah. Yeah. I'll wait. We're just doing odds.
I don't think so.
Was it 2 series? 2 series?
That's 5 over 3. Like what she said. 50 plus 5 or 2.
No.
What's she
Right,
saying?
2 way out front, and then A plus 2 in front.
The person behind you.
Right next
The
to each
person
other.
behind
Very
you.
similar to the X and the Y.
I don't know that. Because she wants to dance.
Alright, in 9, I'm gonna put a 1 under the 4.
Okay.
Right? There's no
Oh,
denominator. Put the 1 there.
Who is she?
Alex, what's the common denominator in number 9?
Behind you. Oh my
3.
God. I'm gonna sing loud. You ain't gonna do.
Yeah, deep voice. You already said that.
10
So
Y.
I'll only have to
I can
alter
hear
the
you
second
4 feet away
fraction.
from one.
Oh shit, that's not right. 23 minus 2Y. Yeah. It's going too slow.
Thumbs up. Who got it right before me?
Dude,
Alright.
I don't copy.
You're dancing. You wrote it down.
I don't copy.
Sometimes I stop working and you guys just start talking.
That's one of the
So I
biggest
try
things
to slow down with it. You guys slow down.
He's an iPhone. I'm on her show.
If I slow down, you better.
Oh, maybe you would multiply the first one by action. I'm just wait till you.
Wait, how do you get the denominator? You know how right here you got X and Y, and then right here you got 3. How do you get it?
First one
The
would be
denominator.
You have to get 3 out of this
Well, I
because
gotta have a Y in there. They
4
both have
over
Y.
1.
So
So you could
I'm
get
gonna have
3
a
out of
Y
the
squared.
bottom.
So it's like a hypothetical. And then I also gotta have
You
B.
would. You times 3
So
on the
it's 5
bottom.
everything in
You
height.
took them at the bottom. On the other side. You need to match both sides.
Yeah, I remember. I was making sure you did.
You're lying. Cause I already know.
What's missing in the first fraction?
You know something?
So I'll multiply with C.
Not that. I ain't trying to know that.
You already did.
So you get.
That's 12C. Oh, okay. What's missing in the second fraction, Brian? C? squared. So I have 1y, but I
Dude,
need y
some
squared,
friends
so
are
I'll
random.
multiply y.
Who is it? Oh shit, we got the same class.
You so dumb.
Okay, I asked 3 students for input on this one. All 3 of them knew what to do.
How did I forget?
Slow.
So I was ready for 13, maybe the most complicated denominator of all of them, I think.
No.
13 just has this guess. Because 2a and a plus 2 look so common already. You get confused, what do I do?
I don't know.
What do I do about this situation?
Already different.
Alright, so even though they both have 8s
13.
and they both have 2s, we're just gonna include them both. Aubrey, what do you think it's gonna be? Yeah. And I could distribute them and make it 2a squared plus 4a. Well, really, I just don't want to. I'm gonna keep it separate. You have a bunch of bread.
You're so funny, it causes me so much pain.
Always wondered.
Bad.
Can't finish it. I can't finish it.
Oh, I need to piss. I'm gonna go now.
Is this going for you to exit? Come back.
It's the lunch
It's
food.
about that time. See you later, pal.
It's the lunch food.
Dude, you missed like the whole like beginning of the segment, so you better get in here right now. We're on 13.
Whoa.
What am I gonna multiply in the first part, Cassidy? 2a, you got it. Negative 4a. And Trey, what are we gonna multiply in the second part? A plus 2. Classwork. Grade it as an assignment though. If you don't need to class it homework. Already at 13. Alright, so we gotta be really careful about subtraction. Subtraction has errors in it a lot. I'm gonna boom here and make that subtraction sign go all the way to the 6. So close. Is the average you working in the problem a while back? Did you get it right? Check your answer. Anything right in silent. You got it? Alright, good job, guys. What about Isabel? Are you doing it? Isabel. What number are you on? Did you get 13 right? Check it. What's your answer? Very good. 15. W squared minus 9. Javier, can you factor that?
Huh?
Can you factor the denominator 15?
W plus 3.
And W minus 3. Don't cancel anything out in this whole process. Canceling out takes you back to the original problem. Talking about, you mean factoring and canceling out? Alright, so my first denominator, my original, it didn't have the whole W plus 3 in it, so I'm gonna multiply it in. My second denominator did have the original everything in it, so I will just keep it. So it's 3W plus 9 minus 2 minus 3 plus 3. Did I go too fast? Finish, Mark?
I just need to do 17.
You skipped 19 and 21 by doing 17?
I did 19 and 21. I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they're perfect opposite,
One by both, one by name?
no, you have to figure out which one. A little tricky.
Oh, the
What I would
first-
what I would
the
do,
first
you
one.
guys,
Do the first one.
reorder. Yeah, we'll do the first one. How do you figure it out?
So you gotta make the K negative and the N positive.
Okay, that's gonna be the first one. I reorder it and then look at it and then factor it and do it. 13.
Don't you make a factor?
So I'm gonna reorder this K minus N in N minus K so that they're in the same order. So I'm gonna rewrite it. Negative K plus N. I haven't changed anything. I just put the K to the front and to the back. And then I'm going to greatest common factor, -1.
Wait, so would the numerator be 0? Hold on, would it be 0?
No. The numerator?
Yeah, because it'd be negative K minus. Oh, never mind.
So now, I reorder the second denominator, and then I take out a GCF of -1, and now I can see how similar the denominators are. This common multiple is a -1 out front of K minus N. So my original problem, it didn't have the -1 in, so I'm multiplying the -1 at the top and bottom of the first fraction. So that's -K. And the second fraction is exactly as it started, just written differently. So I don't have to multiply anything in. we have negative 2k all over negative 1k minus n. You can leave that answer like that, or you can make them positive. Two more. So I'm going to factor the original denominator to x plus 1, x plus 2. So my common denominator will be x plus 1, x plus 1. So this is actually a really important problem because it shows you when and only when you write the same factor twice. This one has 2 x plus 1s in it because one fraction has 2 x plus 1s in it.
Do it. Oh,
We're getting pretty tricky. Here you go. Can you factor n squared minus 2n minus 30?
For 19, the denominator x plus 1 squared.
Okay. I didn't write it like that, I just wrote it. Can you factor that? Well, on the second denominator on number 21. We'll multiply to negative 3 and that should be your good.
1 and negative.
Correct.
I don't know.
So
I'm gonna-
minus 3 and
I'm gonna
n
look
plus
at all
1
of it.
factored form. So our denominator is n minus 3 and n minus 1 side by side. I'm missing an n plus 1 in the first fraction, so I'll have to multiply it in. And that gets distributed n squared plus 1n. fraction, nothing will have to get multiplied in. Everything was originally there. Where is this where you ended?
No.
Keep going. This is the only problem in the whole assignment. You can keep going. If you can, you have to. If it's possible, you have to do it. So, the result, this has not happened yet in any of our examples. This can be factored, which doesn't matter. The only reason it matters is because if we factor it, we can reduce it. This can be factored to n plus 1, n plus 2. You don't always have to factor the numerator, but if it leads to reducing the fraction, you do. So now I can reduce the dividend. That's actually Right, what was the question? We are finished early, so we are going to do well, the one I did last class was 2018. It's not current. That's my current.
Next week.
Or no.
One last one. All of the above. I just want to know. In Mexico, right now. Where's up? So that's what you told
What are
me.
these? Have you never known that
You'll
you use
take me
them?
to
Yeah.
work or something. It's been 3 years. Huh?
You can get a Chromebook if you want.
Yeah.
For you guys, March 2022. Oh, I can't hear that.
They do something. That's a good girl.
Yeah.
What is the winner yet?
909.
Oh, great. Yeah, she is.
They play anything?
Top 3?
How much will it put on my face?
I'll give it to you. You're fine.
You're fine.
1, 2, 1, 2.
You know, we should play heads up 7 on
You can use Safari?
No, I play Heads Up 7 in pro face class, and I make everyone play. I take my shoes off.
I really want to play heads up 7 on today. I've never actually played.
Alex, why is she angry?
This one good too.
Are you guys ready? Is anybody else trying to join?
Yeah, no.
We're now to the lab. Let's start running. So let's start. Join late. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, what the? No, 6?
What was the most streamed song in 2021?
Oh, how am I supposed to know?
9 million streams worldwide. Yep.
I knew it!
I knew this to the radio like that, bro. And that's my question. Oh my god. Oh, come on.
Okay, so it has to be great. It can't be bad.
I told you! We're in it now, baby. We're in it going it now. Oh, I know.
What's your name? I never knew what
Oh, we're in second. We should be winning, though.
What? You know a lot about what is it? I don't know. Yeah! Yeah! You got it right?
Oh, it might have been me because I exited it.
That's random.
Yeah! My IQ is so high.
Oh, yeah. That's no question. Shane Chine. How do you name it? Huh?
She'll be proud of you.
What you mean?
I know.
You what? Joe Biden in third place? Last one should be.
Whoa.
Anything.
Why did I know that answer? I told Trey I was
I told you it was fun. Dude, you literally be under,
Bro, it's
Oh, wait, it's fine. Oh, it's fake.
What did he do? I didn't listen to the question.
Yeah, but I don't think yeah, me too. She can tag me. What? What's it?
March of 2022. No, it's perfect. You made me move. Wait, last one. Last one. Last one.
Wait, what is it? The Olympics
Trey, stop.
I thought it was
Hey, let's go.